Hi, good morning, everyone. It's Rebecca and Mikela from Shireburn.
Morning.
We're really excited to have this webinar with you today. Basically, we are going to be focusing a bit more on a different aspect. So we've recently, with our passion for creating happier and safer workplaces, we've been launching a lot of new modules to the Indigo Suite, specifically HR modules. And basically today, we're going to take a more theoretical approach to our webinar. So we're going to actually be talking about the hiring process and hiring for the team and not the role. So Mikela will actually be taking the lead in this webinar. I'll be asking a few questions along the way, but I'll leave it in Mikela's good hands. If you have any questions, please post them in the questions tab on the left, and we'll answer them at the end of the session.
So good morning from Loa. It's raining. There's a lot of traffic. So, Becky's lucky I got here on time this time, because last time I was a bit late. As Becky rightly said, we have decided to start bringing you short, sweet webinars focusing on content under the umbrella of our drive to build happier workplaces. I always say HR is not rocket science. And it's very, very easy to get right, but it's also extremely easy to get wrong. And we get caught up in the day-to-day. So today we're going to be looking at recruitment, and we're going to be looking at hiring for your team. Why do I say hiring for your team? I say hiring for your team because in the past, we looked at CVs. We looked at qualifications. In my days, qualifications were important. You built your CV. Everything was about your CV. People judged you on your CV. Today, the most important thing for the team is not necessarily the CV. Of course, if you're hiring for a technical role, then you would hire a technical person that has the technical skill. But if you don't take into consideration how the individual's personality will fit into your team, you will most definitely have issues along the way. So today we're going to bring up all these discussions, how do we hire, the mistakes we make in hiring. But first I wanted to start from something extremely important that we sometimes overlook. Whenever I look at HR departments, and I've looked at many, and I've reconstructed many HR departments, the first thing I look at is what my aim is as an HR department, especially in recruitment. What do I want? I want to be the employer of choice. What does that mean? I want to issue a vacancy announcement, and people that are in employment know my company well enough, or know that I'm a good employer and I have a happy workplace, and people leave their job to come and work with me. I don't want people only looking for a job to come. I want people to look at my company and my vacancy and say, I want to work with that company. So for companies like, for example, with great culture such as Google, for example, they don't even advertise their jobs. They just receive thousands of CVs. Now, obviously, we're in Malta. We don't look at the bigger picture like Google. We're not going to have that. But there is a way, and this is what we want to introduce here today, is there is a way to start the process to building your what we call employer brand. At the Shireburn Academy, which we'll be launching later on this year, we're going to be running courses on employer brand. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a nugget of how we can build employer brands. Why is it so important? When you look at brands, generally, you think of Nike, you think of Apple, there's a specific reason. There's something behind the brand. You buy for the brand. How many times do people say, oh, I bought a pair of shorts, I may as well have bought an unbranded pair? But the brand gives you a certain feel. It gives you a certain status, possibly. It also gives you a certain quality. So the first thing I ask you is, what does your brand say? What is your brand? And very often we don't have these conversations about our companies because recruitment and brand are completely interlinked. Today, especially in today's market where we're struggling to recruit good people, we're struggling because the market is oversaturated. It's an employees market. We are selling our business to employees. Not employees are necessarily selling themselves to us. They are, but we are selling ourselves mostly to them. How are we selling ourselves? And so as we did our research, Becky and I, for this webinar, we came across a very sweet story. In America, I think it was in Massachusetts, Beck, remind me, Massachusetts.
Yes.
Massachusetts. There was this deer that tried to get in to the front door of the Marriott Hotel. And there's this little video clip of this deer trying to get through this revolving door. And they caught it on security camera. Obviously, the receptionist got a fright. This was on the front page news. But what the Marriott did was they used this little clip of a video, which we're going to show you, to say there are easier ways to get through the front door at the Marriott and use it as a recruitment campaign. So it attracted attention. So we're going to show you this video and then have a little banter about, you know, what your brand attracts. Video. Have I got the video? Yeah. Okay. It's a very short video. So literally it just gives you an idea of what people can do with opportunities that present themselves randomly.
So I'm going to just play.
Play. Okay, so what the Marriott did was they took this video and it went completely viral. You see, there's an easier way to get your foot in the door at the Marriott. You can just walk through the front door. And they used this as a recruitment campaign, which was a very, very successful recruitment campaign. But what it did was it represented the vibe that they wanted to transmit. It represented the vibe of their tribe, in a sense, because at the end of the day, when you join a company, you join a vibe, you join a culture. You know, very often, even me with clients, sometimes you walk through the door of a company and you're like, I can't imagine, I can't feel it. You know, this is why it's so important to actually walk through the front door when you're doing interviews, not just do them online. First of all, when you meet people face to face, you realize, you know, you get a vibe. And they get the vibe. When they walk through the offices, they feel it. They see whether it's nice, whether it's friendly, whether people are just ignoring you, whether they're not. And so sometimes it might be a good idea for you to step out of yourself or bring in a third party and come into your establishment to understand what the vibe is. What do I pick up? Is it a place where people really want to work? And so, you know, what are the first 3 questions that one would ask about employer branding, Bex? Which are the 3 questions? You know, there are.
What do people say about your brand? What attracts people to your company? What keeps them there? And
Exactly.
Where can you improve, really?
So this is where the brand starts. The brand starts with what your people say. So a bit before we start with vacancy announcements, a bit before we start with recruitment, what's most important is to understand that people buy into a culture. They, you know, we know it instinctively. In Malta, there was this trend at one stage, you know, especially when they were at the height of the gaming companies, and possibly still today we're suffering from that effect, is that obviously the vibe of a gaming company is very different. It's very bright, it's very loud, lots of parties, bananas and apples in the office, breakfast, food in the office, you know. And many times I speak to people in recruitment in companies and they say, how are we going to compete? And I'm like, well, you don't have to compete because your vibe attracts a different tribe. You know, so we constantly have convinced ourselves that we're competing with different cultures, but your culture is different. But if you don't know your culture, how are you going to sell your culture? And then if you sell a culture, does it reflect your culture? So the first place where you would start, this is where I always start when building a recruitment strategy, is understanding what my vibe is. What is it? Are we a serious company? Do people come? Do we attract people that are solid workers that want security of tenure? They're not very worried about, you know, the party scene or the fruit in the morning. Or do we attract people that want to maximum flexibility, for example, or people that just want to come in for 2 years and move? That's fine too. So there isn't a standard rule, but what kind of people do you attract? What kind of people do you need in your company? And what kind of people does the culture attract, more importantly? And the culture is, you know, a very complex thing that comes from the top. So we work with companies, and we will be also introducing you to the concepts eventually in these webinars and also in the academy on how we can shift our cultures, how we can understand our cultures. So that's at its outset. Let's look at first what we're trying to emit. You know, when I walk in to a boutique shop, or I walk in to, you know, a very large retail outlet which is branded, the difference is you can see it. If you walk in and all the clothes are cluttered, you're not going to really feel like dressing up. If you walk in, for example, into a nice big outlet in September, or, you know, end of August, September, and they're already selling winter clothes, unless the AC is freezing, you're not going to try them on. You know, that is part of the experience. What is the experience that you are creating? That's the first. Okay. Then you start with the candidate journey. What is the candidate journey? The candidate journey, Beck, you will give us a little bit about it, especially on an ATS perspective.
To be honest, I wanted to ask a question from your experience here. So you mentioned, you know, your vibe attracts your tribe. And, you know, you can, once you have identified what your vibe is, what can you do to actually attract people to your company when they're already in another job? How can you create that awareness using your employer brand to attract more candidates?
So this is a great question. Also because we are limited with resources. We're limited with resources, and sometimes we're also limited with ideas. So my suggestion is, let's not exaggerate. Let's just look at what we have and let's get it right. If you're looking at a website, let's make sure your website reflects your vibe. If you are a very serious corporate company, then you're hardly going to put bright yellow on your website, for example. Yes. So everything needs to kind of be in sync. If you're not going to put cartoons, if you're not going to put jargon, you're going to put a certain amount of, if you're a CSP, for example, or you're an accountancy firm, or you're a legal firm, then you would use language that will reflect that. If you're a retail outlet, then it would be a different type of language. If you're serving drinks, it would be a different type of language. We sometimes overlook that, Beck. We overlook language. We overlook the way we present ourselves. And sometimes we do it because we're so immersed in our job that we deliver what we know. So the most interesting thing is always get an outside perspective. Always look at possibly organizing a little research group. If you're trying to attract, if your customer and your client, you're trying to attract a type, university students, then have a research group with university students. I mean, I left university decades ago, so I'm hardly the right person to be able to using my language to attract university students. They have a completely different vibe. They have a completely different mentality. Their language is different. They use really weird words. The last one is, it's not that deep. I love it. It's this latest jargon that teenagers are using. It's not that deep. It's a passive aggressive way of telling you you're overthinking life, but that's another story, So I myself had an issue with my language, for example. Every time I write, I realize that I was exaggerating. So when I write, I realize I use words like, fantastic and great and it's a tragedy, and exaggerating it. So let's look at our language. When you're looking at, for example, vacancy announcements, this is really important. Where does your customer journey lie? Where does your client journey lie? The minute you issue your vacancy announcement, very often we don't even realize some things. We go on to ChatGPT. Now, this is the latest, which is a fantastic tool. Fantastic, don't get me wrong. But what it does is it gives us everything. And we're not realistic when it comes to putting the vacancy announcement. We just say, let me tick it off the box. This is what I would like. But what we do is we over-anticipate. If you actually look at a lot of vacancy announcements, you say, but this is really over-scripting this job. Actually, what I need is a fraction of these tools. More so, rather than skill set, it would be more interesting for you to insert things like personality. What type of individual would you like? Someone that works hard, someone that focuses, someone that finishes the job. What kind of skill set are you looking? Rather than has to do this. Also because if they have the right mentality, you can train them to pretty much do everything. Sometimes, obviously, you need qualifications. But qualifications you can put in a different section when it comes to a vacancy announcement. Keep in mind an extremely important point that we discussed. Yasmin and I had discussed it on one of the She podcasts, if I'm not mistaken. Adrienne, who was with us on that postcard, made a very, very interesting point. Women, which constitute more than 50% of this workforce and that you're trying also to attract, will not apply for a job they feel is too big for them. They will always go for something that they know. So if a vacancy announcement overscripts, they will say, I'm not the right person for this job. Men, on the other hand, will do it. They say they can fill that shoe. So let's be a little bit careful. Let's make sure that the language being used is not eliminating people. Recently, there was a big furore on the internet because there was one company, if I'm not mistaken, that actually mentioned that I think it was in real estate. It wasn't even for recruitment, but be careful that we don't eliminate social groups. We don't eliminate that they remain diverse. First of all, it's illegal. But secondly, it doesn't reflect very well on your company if you actually identify and pull out, that you do not want this and you do not want that. Rather, what are the skills? What's the skill set? And we're at hand. We will run courses on how to script vacancy announcements. When you put them up, so for example, our applicant tracking system now on Shireburn gives you the opportunity to actually build a page back. So you can build a page, you can customize it, you can put your logo. That's all extremely important because what it does is it reflects your identity. Then secondly, you're looking at the vacancy announcements. They need to be readable. Sometimes we read vacancy announcements. After 2 lines, you're bored. You're like, how on earth am I going to go and work with this company if even the vacancy announcement is boring? Now, of course, you can't really jazz up to a point, but there is language you can use that can make it a bit more engaging, And it's not the exaggerated language that we find sometimes, that is trying too hard. There is also a medium. So this is something that you get with practice. Sometimes you look at it and it's not quite right. Also, it is really important to understand your audience. There was a time, for example, when I realized, because of an applicant tracking system, and this is the great thing that the applicant tracking system gives you, is that if I were to spend X amount of money on some of the recruitment platforms, for example, they're giving me nothing. Sometimes you think, okay, Facebook is giving me an organic reach. This is giving me that. This is giving me that. How much for my pound? What kind of reach am I getting for the amount of money I'm putting into it? And, in my days, we used to advertise in one of the local daily newspapers. And the first thing you would do is open and would see all these classifieds. That's where you would look for a job. And it was like pretty standard because it was very short. Sometimes keeping it simple is probably better. More information makes people overthink more. There's more of a chance of having something in that advert that maybe makes someone feel insecure. Okay, that's the first part, the vacancy announcement. What about the client journey, Beck? Because this is also extremely important. The client journey, moving on in the client journey, it's one where you receive the vacancy announcement. If I'm looking for a driver, then obviously you're not going to be putting it on a website for accountants, right? What is your audience? That's extreme. Once I actually advertised in that magazine that's given out by the church, because it goes into every household, and I needed a specific job, and it worked. It really, really worked, because it's in every toilet, in every house. It's in every kitchen, in every house. And when you're bored, you open it. So where can you get your most active audience? Where can you? That's something that you need to think of. And it's not because it was done before that it's going to be in any way relevant today. So let's look at these things. Let's question our practices. Let's look at where our money is going. Is it going into the right pot? Then the client journey. If I send an email with my CV, first of all, it takes me a long time to do my CV. And I send it, and there's the anxiety of sending your CV. Everybody feels anxious when they send a CV, and then they'll receive a reply.
In fact, Mick, if I can take a step back, so we've spoken about how to attract them to actually land on your page, right? But once they're there, how can you key into the right potential? So they're there, they're reading your job description. What can you do? Like you mentioned, we've gotten tied down with trying to compete with all the different perks and benefits that are out there. But what do you think will actually help you attract the right person to apply for your job? I mean,
you're right. You asked me this question a few minutes ago and I didn't answer it, but you're perfectly right. So sorry, Beck, I got carried away, which is very typical.
Internally, we had done a bit of an exercise where we tweaked our job descriptions and everything. And the difference we saw in the quality of the applicants coming in was huge. So maybe you could talk a bit about that.
It's about building your brand, Beck. This is not something I wake up in the morning and decide, okay, I have a vacancy announcement. I'm going to just put it out there. Right? This is a slow process. And this is why I'm saying it's never too late to start building your brand. But first you have to understand your brand. And then slowly, sometimes you can write articles. And there are many platforms today where you can start writing articles and getting a bit of brand recognition. There's no need to overthink it. Drip irrigation. You say every week, for example, I'm going to put up a little bit of a post. Every week, I'm going to show the culture. I'm going to evidence the culture. Sometimes it's tree planting. What do you stand for? We're going to go environmental. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of initiatives. We're going to take a couple of photos. It's going to be branded. And slowly you create a little bit of a brand awareness in your target audience. So if your target audience is mostly on Facebook, and the Facebook, by the way, the younger generation is not on Facebook. So my children are not on Facebook. They're on TikTok and they're on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken. They're on Snapchat. They're on something else. What's it called? There's this new one. I forgot. I'll tell you in a second. But there are different, So where is your audience? Facebook, my children tell me, you're a bit old, man. This is the older generation use Facebook. But it's still very, very impactful when it comes to information and information sharing. And you don't have to come up with the information yourself. You can endorse articles. You can become a thought leader in your area. So this is slow and steady. But we need to know what we're doing. What is the type of brand? What is the type of company I'm promoting? And some of us haven't even thought of it, And the best way to get this information is generally from staff surveys and also from exit interviews. What type of company do you feel we are? Why did you come and work here? What didn't you like about our company? This is all good data, because this is data that you can use to improve on your culture, but also to, does that now finally answer your question? Yes, it does finally answer. So it's all about the way you make people feel, that they're joining something, that people like, we are not meant to be living in caves alone as human beings. We want to be able to go. You spend more time at the office than you spend at home. So you want to feel safe. You want to be happy. You want to also feel that vibe. You want to be part of an inclusive place. You want to feel included, and not every character fits everybody. This is a very important point.
So my next question is something we're really passionate about here at Shireburn, is helping our clients to continue to build workplaces that are based on trust and safety. And we believe that this has to start from the get-go, right? Not when they start working with you, but even from when they apply. So what can they do to help continue building that trust from literally the application stage with the employee? You were touching upon it a bit before with the communication.
So look, trust is crucial, Beck. Trust is crucial. It's really difficult sometimes, and HR professionals on the call will understand me. Sometimes you're sitting in an interview, you're saying stuff and you don't even believe it yourself, right? So you're in an organization, for example, and you're not feeling it. And you're trying to sell this organization as this amazing organization, and you're not feeling it. And it comes across. Don't underestimate the subconscious. It is better to be honest. I have very often sat in interviews and say, oh, we're not perfect. There's a lot of growing to do, but here you can grow in this way and you can help us improve. There are no workplaces that are perfect. Perfection does not exist. People change. Personalities are difficult. You're going to have issues all the time, so don't sell a perfect organization. Don't sell amazing bonuses at the end of the year if you don't give amazing bonuses, or there's a catch with the amazing bonus, because otherwise people are going to be disappointed. It's better for people to have a reality check, understand who you are, and the people that front the interview are extremely, extremely important. So before that, there's a little gap. If I send in my CV, I expect a reply, at least an acknowledgement. Look, your CV came to the same place. This happens when you're sending income tax returns. It's the most frustrating thing. You send a lot of money, I did it recently, and you don't know whether it went to the right box. You don't know because nobody sends you an email. You have no idea whether you've done it right. Now in a CV, that anxiety is real. And then people expect a reply. So set yourself some standards. If you are a company that doesn't answer somebody for 4 weeks, then people are not going to think you're greatly reliable. Do they want to work? If you phone for a service and they don't answer you for 4 weeks, will you still push and pay for that service? No. So what kind of vibe are you giving off? It's extremely important, And one of the problems with recruitment is that we make the mistake of having one person only handle recruitment. What if the individual is sick? What if the individual is on leave? What happens? Which is why an applicant tracking system is so crucial, because an applicant tracking system does not depend on the individual. So what you're doing is, it's there. I can drop dead tomorrow, God forbid, but someone can slip into my place and nobody notices. The emails go out and they're auto-generated. The answers are standard. You don't have any silly mistakes in Maltese and English or spelling mistakes. I've seen horrible ideas. If there's spelling mistakes or, using the double negative in English, or the I have been, for example, bad grammar, that reflects badly on your organization. So this could all, because, with the help of AI, artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, it can help you script good quality answers and replies, holding replies. I'll be back to you within a week. You give them a time frame. Within a week, you call them in for an interview or you decline. Let me give you an example. If Becky applies for my company, but she's not the right person, she doesn't have what it takes. I don't think so. I can either ignore her or I can answer her and politely decline. But the experience that she has had in my company will encourage her to say, you know what? The company Mikela works for really treated me well, even though they declined me. They declined me kindly. They had the decency to pick up the phone or to send me an email. Most people don't.
And I knew where I stood.
And you knew where you stood. Honesty. Honesty is crucial. This is really the extremely important point. And then you're moving into, assessment interviews. It's extremely important that, for example, my best friends during interviews were the receptionists, always. I always picked up the phone to check in with the receptionist. How did the person coming for the interview treat you? On the phone and as soon as they came in. If they were rude to the receptionist, they were out. That was a rule, because I was hiring for my team. I wasn't hiring for the skill. I needed people that were going to integrate. I needed people that were going to be polite, even to the receptionist, even to the messengers, to the drivers, to anyone in the organization. This was crucial. This is data. It's extremely important. You're picking up data of personalities. When it comes to CVs and qualifications, people are going to apply with the right qualifications. Sometimes they don't, but you can grow them. If I have someone that comes in and says, they started and finished a job, for me, that's crucial. I know you're going to start and finish a job. That's what I need. If I need someone with an attention for detail, I'm going to employ myself. Hate detail. Hate. I'll employ Becky. Becky loves detail. So you can ask the right questions. And the right questions are not, do you like detail? The right questions would be, give me an example of a time you did a job which required detail. What were the challenges? Did you start and finish? So let's find, we will be doing workshops and we will give you question banks on actually asking the right questions, situational questions, which will give you answers, which then will make up your mind. Another crucial mistake that we make when it comes to recruitment is that we hire for ourselves rather than for the team. So this is a very interesting psychological fact. I had a great boss once, a very difficult boss, but a very great boss. And he said, Mikela, I always hired people with a skill set different to mine. I was never threatened. I always hired someone different to me. And I made it a point. So what is the point of hiring someone like you? Now we have this habit, right? We look through CVs. The first thing we do is go onto Facebook. Let's see who they are. Ooh, I have this one in common, this one in common, this one in common. Ooh, this one has a raunchy photo. No, this one we've eliminated. We judge. Big mistake. Huge. Now everyone fights me on this one, but trust me. The most important thing in an interview is to remain objective. If you pull in CVs and the first thing you do is look them up on Facebook, you're getting a reality which is distorted. You're judging them from your lens. And this is our biggest challenge in recruitment, Beck, that we judge from our perspective. We judge on what we know. Becky went to the same school as me. She speaks English the same way as me. Or she went to Museo like I did. Or she did, this like I did. Then obviously we have people in common. Why do we do this? Comfort zone. Mm-hmm. We like to feel comfortable. We like people that are very similar to us. It feeds us. But what it does is you're replicating the same people on the same team, which hardly makes business sense. Now, if they're the right people and they fit in, of course, then yes. But so in a way, it feeds little bit of our ego. This is what it feeds, a little bit of our ego where, we relate to it. That's important. But it's important to also take an objective view. This is why when you are bringing in people into your team, it's extremely important to have other people in the interview with you. People that are objective, people that know the dynamic. HR is great. I used to be kind of the cultural ambassador when I did interviews. I wouldn't ask any questions about technical know-how, Beck. I would only ask about culture. What are your hobbies? Do you laugh? Do you smile? Do they smile when they walk into the interview? People don't smile today, Do they shuffle? If HR professionals within 2 seconds of someone walking into the room can pick up these things, use it. It's good data. It's good data. What kind of individual are they going to be around an office? And if you're not convinced, bring in someone else to meet them. See if the vibe is the same. See if you're prejudiced. See if you're in a bad mood that day. Sometimes it happens. Okay. So that's extremely, extremely important. Let us not be prejudiced and conditioned by what we've judged, by the CV. Sometimes I very often get, oh no, this one, every 2 years they move the job. Okay, so in my days, it was a problem. Today, every 2-3 years, people move jobs. So on the one hand, it could be that they're excited and they're moving and they have different experiences of different leadership skills. On the other hand, it could also mean that they're flitty. Yeah,
exactly. And Mick, I think an important thing is for HR, people who are living and breathing HR, it is easy to start to understand this concept, even of hiring someone not like you, not with the same skill set. But I think something that's key is also kind of consulting your hiring managers to take on this mindset as well, because it's very easy for you as HR to understand it, but then to have the hiring manager feel safe enough to do that. And beyond that as well, kind of consulting with your hiring managers who are new, who have never done this interview process before, what is expected, what kind of questions can be asked. Okay, they can go to their head of department, they can go to someone higher. But I think having the HR spin on that and HR influencing that whole journey as soon as possible will help you continue hiring for the team and not just the role. So I, like you, I try to look for people who go outside of my skill set. If there's something I can do, I shouldn't be necessarily employing someone else to do the same thing I do, but rather what I can't do. But I don't think it's always easy for hiring managers to see that and admit that as well. What do you think?
At all. It is, it takes a lot of courage. And my mistake always in HR when I was in management was always expecting it. So as HR, you get a certain amount of wisdom because you've had it over and over and over on repeat. But keep in mind that hiring managers are also on a journey. Sometimes they're new. This is their first job that they're hiring for. And so they're insecure. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. I had a manager coming in only recently and he said, did you hear about the person I had to lay off? Feeling really, really dejected that he made a mistake. And I'm like, good for you. That's why there's probation. That's why there's probation, to see if you made the right choice. And sometimes we don't. And it's okay to admit that we didn't make the right choice. This is extremely important, Beck, especially on recruitment. There's a 6-month probation period. Use it. The 6-month probation period, if the individual is not working really hard to prove their skill and worth within the first 2 weeks, you have a problem. Sometimes you can give a chance. By the 3rd month, you know whether they fit. But what happens is we are a little bit in denial. Did I make such a bad decision? Am I going to flop? It's going to be really difficult for me to start the process once again. But then you get yourself a bigger problem. After 6 months, it's an even bigger problem because you're stuck with the problem then, right? So we need to recognize and understand the fact that let us not be so judgmental on ourselves. Let us leave space for error. We will make errors because errors are normal. We will fail many times. And each time you go back and you say, okay, where did I make the mistake? Did I need someone with this skill set or that skill set? Who are the type of people I need to employ? And this is extremely important. Extremely important. And don't worry if you've made a mistake. But this feeds our need not to fail. It's our fear of failure. It's our shame that we've made a mistake. Going back to HR and saying, you know what, I'm going to have to fire this guy or I have to fire this individual, because they just don't click in the team. And then you give a chance and then you sleep over it. And then it's the weekend and it's like, well, no, let me give them another chance. But in your gut, they're not right. And that decision is very difficult. At the beginning of my HR career, I used to find it extremely difficult to lay people off, But then after I realized I'm actually doing the individual a favor, doing it safely, doing it calmly. Because if you don't give this feedback to individuals, they will never receive it. They will never be motivated to improve. So how difficult is it to have these honest conversations? And we find this everywhere. If you heard the webinar that we did on performance management, I had the same issue. This is about honest feedback. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. It's really, really uncomfortable. Why do we write vacancy announcements that literally include absolutely everything? Because we don't want to leave anything to chance. When actually, sometimes with recruitment, a lot of times with recruitment, people are beautiful. They don't fit in a box. They don't tick all the boxes. They're different. And this is why recruitment is so special. It is special because when people come in, they change something about your organization. They bring something different. We worry sometimes about turnover rates. In some industries, this is great. At Indigo, we just launched the benchmarking. And you could see it's extremely exciting. Our analytics section and insights, it's extremely exciting. You look at your turnover rate and you're like, oh my God. But then you compare it, benchmark to the industry, and you realize this is normal in an industry. Some industries are up to 35, 40% of turnover, and that's the way the industry works. And then there are some industries where it's like 10, 15%, which is relatively normal, between 8 and 15%. That's okay. It's good. Why? Because you're bringing in some fresh water into the organization. You're bringing in new ideas. Sometimes it's important. It's always important, actually, because you never know where your best ideas are going to come from. You never know what experience people are going to bring. And these are the things that one needs to look for when recruiting. Recruiting for the future of the company. Not necessarily for the needs I have today, but also what can be done with the skill set in front of me. And it's scary, Becky. It's really, really scary. It's scary, especially for the older ones, for us. Like, I'm hitting 50 next year. It's scary because all of a sudden you're thinking, is my skill set redundant? It's not, because the wisdom is there. But you are going to be bringing in people that are, sometimes better qualified, better aptitude for the job than you. That's good. It's good. It's courageous. But it's also a little bit scary. And this is another place where we will be working on, through the academy, through our podcasts, through our webinars, of how we can work with ourselves to bring the best version, to feel safe when making these decisions in recruitment, because it's not always very, very easy. And that's where we start asking difficult questions. Sometimes you hear yourself and you think, did I say that properly? An interesting one as well, Beck, is the vibe that you create with the interviewer. Sometimes we take it a little bit for granted. Prepare for your interview. So Becky and I, before this webcast, we prepare. Becky prepares. And she whips me into place to prepare. And we prepare and we research. And then I'm whipped again. You prepare. It's scripted. We study it. We understand what are the messages that we want to, Now interview is the same. What is the message that I want to give off as a company? What's the vibe? If Becca and I don't get on, you notice we don't like each other. Imagine we were here and we didn't like each other. That's what you're going to be perceiving of us. That's reflecting of my company. How am I going to present myself? Am I going to wear earrings? Do I wear a little bit of makeup? Am I too much? Am I intimidating? Do I walk in arrogantly? Do I not? These are all things you will pick up. Am I scary in the interview? Do I draw you in or push you away? If someone walks into the door, this is my dream job, but my God, the manager. We've all been in interviews like that. Yes? You've had experience, Becklana?
Yes.
Tell us.
No, it's sometimes you look at a job description and you're like, okay, on paper, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly where I see my career going. You go in, when you walk in the door, the general vibe, like you were talking about earlier, no one's talking, no one's smiling, no one's laughing between themselves. Nowadays we have these big open plans. And I think that is one of, when you walk into that open plan, it should, people judge what your culture is like. If everyone is really serious, locked out, not talking to anyone else, it gives off a certain vibe. I love it here. We have musical instruments set up in some open plans to trigger creativity in a different aspect. So when you walk in as a creative person, especially, or even as a social person, someone in a sales team tends to be very sociable, and you see that social vibe, you're like, okay, this is my tribe. This is where I want to be. And it makes you want the role even more. But I've had cases where you walked in and it was a bit like, okay, this is a very, very serious place and not much socializing within the team. What would communication be like? Especially in departments where you have to work with other departments. So no, it's definitely a case, even the whole office setting. I'm not talking about having to go over the top and having green everything and the latest technology everywhere, but the vibe between the people, that is what candidates are judging when they walk in the door. How do people vibe? How does your receptionist greet them? You mentioned how they treat the receptionist, but the other way around.
Crucial.
They are your, frontline representative when someone walks through the door. So,
this is easy one. So I used to live in Rome. I was a diplomat and I used to live in Rome. When I landed in Rome, in the diplomatic corps, they give you an allowance and to buy furniture and stuff when you land. It's a settling in allowance. It wasn't a lot, but it was, enough. I was very excited. I was going to go in. I walked into this beautiful shop. I was in Centro Storico in the central part of Rome. Beautiful, beautiful, tiny flat. I needed a few things. Walked into the shop. The woman was on her phone. She did this to me. After about 10 minutes, I got completely bored, walked out. The stuff in the shop was really, really beautiful, but they didn't vibe me. Sometimes you walk into a shop and they ignore you. Other times you walk into a shop and you're still standing in the line and they serve you. It's a pleasure. You don't even think of how much you're spending. You just go in. It's a pleasure to be served, And so what is the vibe that you're giving off? Even sometimes, especially in HR, we tend to be so stressed. You have an investigation, you have some drama going on, you have some victimhood going on. It's constant. People are vomiting on you all the time. stressful. And then all of a sudden you're whisked in, to a meeting. Punctuality. You know how rare it is for people to be punctual at interviews? It's really rare. So they're there, they're half an hour early, they come in and sit at reception. They're sitting like lemons, because they're nervous, they're shifty, they have their files on their laps. They don't know what you're going to ask you. You know the questions. They're feeling anxious. What are you going to do to make them feel safe when they walk in? How are you going to transmit that this is a happy place? Even when they walk into your room, welcome, have a seat. Would you like a coffee? That's great. Or a glass of water. Generally when you get nervous, Beck, you need to drink. Mm-hmm. So it's this light keeps on coming on and off. It's
the sensor.
It's the sensor. Sorry. Okay. So just so you know that all of a sudden I look a bit brighter. Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of spoken about the candidate journey now, and I think it's also important to have a look at kind of how we're helping our clients as well. We'll go on in a bit as well about kind of some key takeaways that we can do to kind of improve the candidate journey. But like I mentioned earlier, we've launched a number of new modules. Today, I'm going to just give you a brief overview of two of them. So first, earlier on, we were talking about the awareness and consideration stage of a candidate. And Mikela touched upon the fact that we launched an applicant tracking system. So we launched Indigo Hiring a few months ago. Basically, Indigo Hiring will allow you to create a careers page, like Mikela mentioned. It will allow you to infuse your own employee value proposition, make it personal, upload photos, give the vibe of your company out there in your careers page. It's not just a page with the job openings. You can add carousels with photos, you can upload videos, you can put your ethos in there, put your values, etc. Allow you to really showcase who you are as an employer brand. Mm-hmm. And what's important is so for example, a lot of our photos aren't, the staged photos of the staff. They are authentic photos and videos, seeing the team for who they are. And I think that allows you to make sure that the type of people you are attracting or the type of people that is also on brand with the rest of your team. There's a lot more functionality to it. I'm not going to go into the actual functionality today. We had a webinar a few months ago about it, but I'll pop up a poll on your screen shortly asking if you'd like more information. We can set up a one-to-one demo about that. And the second product, actually, around this time last year, we launched Indigo Insights, which Mikela touched upon, which is the analytics side of things. We realized that, especially in this post-COVID world, there was so much more hunger for being able to easily analyze the payroll data that you have, your HR data that you have, everything in Indigo. And we launched Indigo Insights, which back then was allowing you to analyze your HR data that's in Indigo. Now we've taken it a step further. A couple of weeks ago, we launched Indigo Benchmarks. So what that does is that it basically will give you an idea of the brackets, the pay brackets for different occupation groups and occupation roles across the whole market. So we have over 80,000 data points that are being pulled. This is a bit of a revolutionary product in the sense that at the moment, a lot of the information you find out there are actually static reports, which depend on people filling in Excel sheets. Whether they're filling them in accurately or not is another question. There's no type of validation to that data coming in. Whereas we're pulling live data, it is refreshed on a daily basis. So that data is the most up-to-date data you will find. Again, with 80,000 data points, which a lot of these reports cannot compare with, allowing you to get a real good understanding of what the real market is like out there. Talking a bit about statistics, we use what are called the lower quartile, the median, and the upper quartile rather than an average. And why we do that is basically an average can be skewed by outliers, whether on the low end or the high end. When you're using the lower quartile, median, and upper quartile, it kind of is able to eliminate these outliers. So it's basically, if you have 100 data points, it's looking at the 25th, the 50th, and the 75th data point to give you that bracket. So we were really careful about how we're doing, how we're displaying the data over there as well. We have a star rating for data quality. So basically, if it's lower than a 2-star rating, meaning that there's less than 2 companies out there with less than 10 employees with that role, we don't even show the data. It's aggregated, so you can't tell where the data is coming from. It's just a role that you see. And again, market-wide. Even if you're deciding to open up a new role, a new department, a new company, you still have access to that data. It's not limited to the roles that you have within the system as well. So I think that's a really powerful thing to have as well.
I think these tools, so it's really interesting. Like, I am not a data person, okay? I'm allergic to numbers. I hate numbers because I didn't like maths and they give me an ick. But over the years, I have realized how crucial it is to have data points, to be able to drive your decisions. Only recently, for those of you that know me, know that I like my kids play basketball, so I use basketball very often in my analytics. And only recently, I watched a documentary on this woman who was analyzing for the Basketball Association with data and algorithms, mathematical algorithms, as to the predisposition of someone to score with their left hand, and creating a threat factor. Insane. It completely changed the way the game is seen and the way the game is played and the way it's coached. And HR, this is a huge opportunity for HR to be very, very relevant. Okay, one of the biggest challenges that I found, and I used to get very offended, which is not a big thing because I get offended quite a bit, but I used to get really upset when people say, well, HR is a cost to the company. It is a huge investment, and it's a huge investment if you have the right tools. If you have the right tools to be able to analyze the data. So let me tell you something very small. If I have an applicant tracking system that is going to tell me where my applications are coming from, are they coming from Facebook? Are they coming from this platform? Are they coming from this platform? Are they coming from Glassdoor? I know where to put my money. So next time round for this role, I know that the best platform is not Facebook, it's Instagram. Or it's not Instagram, it's TikTok. Where am I going to put the most money? Where do I get the best reach? Where do I get the best candidates? Sometimes you can put a lot of money, you get a lot of candidates, but a lot of them are useless for your job. But then you get 2, 3 that are very, very good from one. So you say, okay, I'm going to focus everything there. You're saving money, and this is where we look at the spend, but we don't look at how much we save. Not only that, let's look at benchmarking. Let's look at benchmarking for everything, not just for salaries. I've always said people don't leave jobs for salaries. They don't leave jobs necessarily for salary. Mostly they leave their managers. They leave jobs for culture. Mostly for opportunities to grow. Salary is not necessarily the first. For some people it is. And when it is, you don't want those types of people in your organization that are only going to be driven by the salary, right? That is the key. But salary is important, especially in today's market, where some of the salaries are extraordinary. But are the people coming with the right expectations? Can you argue it? And you say, you know what? I know for a fact that the salary that you're requesting is not the average salary. Oh, but I heard my friend got this. Yes, your friend may have got it, but your friend is an outlier at this level of experience, and you have real life data points, exactly as you would do with payroll. So this is something that can drive not only, but it saves you a lot of money. It saves you a lot of money, and you're driven by your analytics. If you look at, for example, the statistics of leavers and joiners, especially today when we're employing a lot of third country nationals, Beck, we've seen it when we're looking at our insights. We've seen it, which are the most reliable nationality to employ. And you could see the statistics and they come up on your screen. Where are the most attrition rates coming from? Where am I having most problems with, for example, overtime? You can see them immediately, your red flags come up. And so what you've become is you're transforming your HR department into just something that is executing into an advisor based on fact, right? So you become advisors. And this is one challenge that we have here at Shireburn, and what we're going to be addressing in the academy, and what we hope to address through our, podcasts and our webinars is instilling a sense of confidence in HR functions and HR professionals to be able to take those conversations to board level, to be able to have the confidence based on facts, to be able to have the same gravitas as a financial controller. When a financial controller comes in with facts, nobody contradicts. Talk with facts rather than with feelings, rather than with emotions, So this is the way that you create a balance in HR and use that data to drive your decisions. That's really, really crucial. And in this case, your recruitment decisions. Using the system to be able to create a customer journey that is really, really comfortable and that makes your company look good. But not only that, that also gives you succession planning, which is extremely important, that, your HR can literally shut down, but your recruitment process is still going on. You don't just go missing in action, MIA overnight. And then the data to be able to take the right decisions when it comes to the candidates that you're employing and your interviewers, etc. Yeah.
In fact, as well, to touch upon another point you mentioned earlier, so we were talking about how important continuous communication is to building that trust with the candidate. Indigo Hiring also allows you to maintain our communication with the applicant as well. We also, as you move the candidate to different stages within that candidate journey, have automated replies. You can set them up, no spelling mistakes, you're paying attention to all of that. And you can also delay it. So, you came out of the interview and decided, no, this isn't the person for us. You don't want them to receive that email within minutes of them walking out the door. But we also know how busy the HR life is. You're going to move them onto that stage and get on with the next task of your day. So what we've done is we actually allow you to delay that message by a few hours, by a day, by 2 days, so that they get it after a more decent, so to say, amount of time. We also, so those standardized replies will help you continue the employer brand. You can work with your marketing team for it as well to make sure that the voice being used is in line with your brand. And also we allow you to empower your hiring managers from day one. So, for example, at the moment, the sales team at Shireburn is hiring. We have a candidate, job position open on our page, which is on Indigo Hiring as well. And I can see all the CVs as they come in. I have no dependency on the our HR manager to forward me any CVs outside of the system. That can be a whole GDPR nightmare in its own right. You can give access to a specific job post to a hiring manager or to a number of hiring managers, because it might be you mentioned having the hiring committee, the interview committee on board. So it's basically, you can give them all access. They can write their comments internally. So you have a team discussion, their own secret notes. You can set up a scorecard. So following the interviews, people can score based on soft skills or even technical skills. And then you get an average to see who the strongest candidate is, especially when you have a lot of different applicants who seem good on paper applying. It will help you prioritize those as well. So Indigo Hiring will really help that whole candidate journey, even from an internal perspective, making sure the different stakeholders are aligned. So I'm just going to pop a poll on your screen to ask you if you would like to get any more information about the Indigo products we've just mentioned. So you have Indigo Hiring, which is the applicant tracking system. We have Indigo Benchmarks, which is basically where we're talking about having the pay brackets for different occupation roles and roles. We would, if you say that you're interested, our sales team will get in touch. We can set up a demo of the system as well as give you a pricing quote for it. So I'm just going to give you a few minutes to answer the poll. If you don't have time to answer the poll, or you're watching the recording of this, as we will be sending out a recording of this webinar as well, feel free to drop an email to sales@shireburn.com. So that's sales@shireburn.com, and we'll be more than happy to continue our conversation there.
Also, if some of you need additional help when it comes to looking into your insights, for example, and benchmarks and really understanding, we get it. We get it. We really, really get it that, the numbers at the beginning look like double Dutch sometimes, and then to be able to interpret them and to be able to understand them and to be able to actually present them. The great thing is that it is very, very easy to understand, but more so is how are you going to build policy around the needs of your company? So that is really crucial for us. I don't know whether anyone has questions. Maybe you can pop them into the chat as well whilst we insert the poll. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask us about recruitment, about our experiences, we all have different experiences, and we're speaking here on the basis of our experience. And some of you work in extremely challenging industries where turnover is high, where you don't find a lot of people to hire. So then we're looking at more effort onto retention. How can you do that? But ultimately, what is most important is the culture. What brand have you got? It really, really is the culture. If you walk into a shop and buy a top and it's good quality, then you're going to buy a top from the same place the next time round. If it's not good quality, you'll probably use it and then just throw it away. And the same for us, the same for if people come and experience you, even if they leave, if they have a good experience, they're going to speak well of your company. That's crucial. It's crucial. You could be the best company in the world, but have a crappy culture. If you have a crappy culture and people don't feel excited to come to work every morning and spend all that time there, they don't feel safe, they don't feel that you've had their back, they don't feel happy, then you could give the best salaries in the world and you will not find the right people for the right jobs. So this is really crucial. And this is where we feel that we can make the most impact. We feel that we can help workplaces figure it out, pretty much.
We haven't got any questions yet in the questions area. Even if they're product related, feel free to drop them there. I'm happy to answer as well. But maybe in the meantime, we'll go back to the questions just in case anything comes in the next few minutes. But Mick, maybe we can touch upon now some action points that people can take on board to take offline and, understand how important their employer branding is, what they can do to understand what the team internally sees or understands by their employer brand, and how they can better the candidate journey. So how can they rally their team? How can
so
they
get my late father always used to. So my late father had this theory, and I always keep it in mind. There was this Dominican priest at Nazareno Church, and his name was Father Shireburn. And he was famous for one thing, his 3-minute pritkas, his 3-minute sermons. And his philosophy was, if you can't say it in 3 minutes, don't say it at all. We have a habit of overthinking. The reason I mention it is for you to remember it. We have a habit of overthinking. We overthink our website. We overscript it. We put too much information. Simple. Keep it simple. Keep everything simple. Keep your vacancy announcement simple. Keep your job description simple. Keep them simple. Keep them simple. Keep them legible. Be simple. People like authenticity. They like human touches. They don't like to speak to computers. They like the human touch. Believe it or not, we still crave it. After COVID, even more so. We crave the human touch. We crave, understanding quickly. So many times you walk into environments where they're talking stuff that you don't understand. If you're in an environment where you're using a lot of acronyms, don't use acronyms. Instead of using MIA, you're using missing in action. Let people understand you. Bring people in. That is your brand. Look at your website. Take a critical look at your website. Understand the language that you use. Is it old language? Is it antiquated? Is it exaggerated? Are you reflecting your environment correctly? Does it sound like you? Get a small focus group together. Does it sound like you? Look at your salary benchmarks. Are you fair? Is your organization a fair organization? Are there difficult questions that you need to bring up? You cannot solve everything in a day. I used to make this mistake. I expected everything to change in 5 minutes. It doesn't change in 5 minutes, but it is a process. Be aware. The more aware you are, the more you can improve. There is no workplace that is perfect. It's always going to be a journey, but at least you're committed to the journey. You're committed to feedback. You're seeing it in your face. The insights are giving you one thing. And then you're starting to implement. I think there's a question, Elenia.
What do you think is the best approach to handle a rude candidate during an interview?
Okay, I've had some rude candidates in an interview. That's very, very interesting. Well, immediately you'll make up your mind, right? My approach has always been to always rise above it. Remember, at that stage, it is not what people say. It is the way you react that is going to define who you are. So I wouldn't even, and define your employer brand. At the end of the day, it is a reflection on the individual if they're rude, which means instead of asking 5 questions, you ask 2. And then say, thank you very much. I think we've learned enough about you. We will be in touch. And that's it. That's it. Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you. Always be polite. Always rise above it. Shake hands and move out. And then put an absolute no, and actually say the reasons. Keep in mind that today, under the legislation, people can actually ask you for your interview notes. So it is extremely important that you're polite on interview notes. I've made this mistake once or twice, writing the way I felt. You can say the same thing in a very polite way, that if someone asks you for an interview note, then you're going to have to present it. So just be careful when you're writing interview notes. What's your best tip to find the best candidate for your company? Loving this webinar. Thank you, Zilda. Thank you. So it is extremely important, you know, best candidate. What does best candidate mean? It's the best fit for your team. This is what's crucial. And the best fit for your team will fit the team. If you're a boring culture, sometimes there are boring cultures, boring nerdy cultures, then you need someone that's going to fit right in. You know, sometimes there are people that come in and they like your sense of humor. Others don't, you know. I tend to make a mistake sometimes. My sense of humor is very brutal. Not everyone can take it. So I have to tone it down quite a bit and remind myself. Okay, so really, it's a bit of a misnomer, the best candidate. This is why this webinar, this is why we'd like you to understand. Let's think out of the box. The best candidate may not be your idea of the best candidate. The best candidate may be someone that gets the job done, someone that's creative, someone that's going to be not panic under pressure, someone that's going to come up with, you know, someone that's agile, someone that you can move without hassling, you know, someone that's not going to turn around and tell you, but my job description said this. And I'm not in my job description. Don't straight jacket yourself, guys. Don't straight jacket yourself, you know. Next one.
I think an interesting one is, so let's say you've done an exercise and you decide to tweak your approach, right, to the whole recruitment journey, the whole candidate journey. What are some maybe KPIs or measurements that an HR team can look at to see if it's working or not? I mean, obviously, there's things like if the acceptance rate goes up or the number of qualified applicants that comes through is enough. How would you go about measuring it, Nick, if it were?
Well, so there's a lot of measurement. I don't overthink life, okay? So I don't overthink life. The most important thing for people in recruitment to understand is to be able to create a noose. And what I mean by a noose is a sixth sense. A sixth sense that someone walks in and you know they will fit into your company. Not the first time someone walked in for a particular job. I've interviewed them. I've literally picked up the phone to another manager in another department and told them, come and meet this person now. This person is a fit for your team. Be brave. Think outside the box. Explain to them, look, I think sometimes most people that come for interviews are not aware of their skill set. Keep in mind the culture we have of not giving feedback. So if you, as an HR professional, feel it, sense it with all your body, oh my God, this person can really fit into the sales team, but they're applying for the software team. I'm like, you know what, with your skill set, I could do with you in this area. Let's create a new role. Be creative. Imagine people where they would fit in and also understand where they won't. You know, sometimes their Facebook profile, their CV is telling you, you love them. Definitely, I have some great candidates. You've already judged them. They come in front of you and like, how could I have gotten it this wrong? Your mind is saying one thing and your gut is saying another. Listen to your gut when it comes to recruitment. You know, something it's telling you. And if you're not convinced, don't go for the lowest common denominator. Very often, we find a problem recruiting. Very, very, very often. And this is a problem because, you know what, sometimes we scrape the bottom of the barrel. Sometimes we say better, you know, a person than not a person. But it comes at a big cost. It comes at a big cost.
So we've got another question. So
yes,
when you're in the interview stage, I know HR tends to have a gut instinct here. But sometimes the person you meet in the interview and the person you meet during probation are two very, very different people. How would you approach that? How soon are you able to tell? Should you alert the hiring manager straight away? Would it come from the hiring manager usually that they notice it before you do? How can you deal with that type of situation as well? Unfortunately, sometimes, you know, the interview table is a sales pitch. So how they portray themselves and then how they actually fit into the role. Or
you know, the truth is, when you experience people face to face on a day to day, you will realize that your gut feeling was right and you've ignored it. So we work on sessions that our gut, if you go back, the problem is admitting, right? Because we're a little bit proud to admit sometimes, but your gut is extremely important. Majara Shea, you have 6 months probation, Bex, use it. I'm a huge fan of probation. Probation is an extremely important time. We ignore it sometimes. Probation passes and everyone forgets. But probation is crucial. How many times do managers phone you and say, we need to get rid of this person or we need to fire this person? Oops, 2 days after probation. Too late. 1 day before probation ends. Are you serious? The day I had to fire someone once on the day probation ended. It's cruel, guys. It does nothing to your brand. Within 2-3 weeks, good managers understand whether the individual is right for their team or not. Within 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks, they show you immediately. It's very difficult. A facade of 15 minutes is easy, but 2-3 weeks, you pick it up. Attitude on the job, coming late, not bothering, insubordination, hard-headedness, not open to new ideas. These are all things that you can pick up. As HR, always, midterm review, immediately. 10 days after hire, I always check in with the hiring manager to see how it's going. Midterm, 3 months, make a decision, yes or no. There's no need. Otherwise, you impact your employer brand. I think there's a last question, Beck.
Yes, there's another question here with regards to, sometimes you'll have a candidate and they don't speak English, which I know we're in Malta and Maltese is also important, but English is quite a good basis as well. And it's very difficult to communicate. So you have no option but to actually stop the interview. Some maybe tips about how to do that in a polite manner, not to offend anyone.
There are some beautiful expressions in Maltese, which I won't repeat over here. However, if you request people to speak English and they come to an interview and they do not know how to speak English, then they look bad, not you. Now, you can have pre-screening. I believe very much in pre-screening. Keep in mind, HR very rarely consider the cost of interviews. Okay, the cost of interviews, if you look at your hourly rate and you spend 4 hours interviewing and there are 3 people interviewing, then you have the hourly rate times 3 people. Calculate the cost of that interview. It's huge. That is also a cost. So you want to minimize the amount of time people waste on interviews that of people that they cannot. Now, there are many, many ways. With TCNs, it's a little bit different. Very often that you will phone or see them online and they don't speak English, right? And so you ask them questions in English. You try once or twice and say, look, I'm struggling. I have a difficulty. Is there a reason why you're not understanding me? And then say, I apologize, but I'm going to have to terminate the conversation here. I would have loved to get to know you. However, I cannot understand you. Yes. So there is a communication barrier. That's it. You don't even need to tell them they didn't get the job. And then you just, inform them that they didn't get the job. With the Maltese, it's pretty much the same. If you require people to speak English on the job, then you're going to need it. Now, I know that really the situation is very, very difficult. You need people. There are a lot of TCNs. Sometimes there's a potential for them to learn English on the job, and some do. Understand their motivation. Really understand. Sometimes you go with their gut. There are people I've employed that I've really taken a big chance on, and it's worked, and some that it didn't work, and I got very disappointed about it. And then you learn. But, you take it on the chin and you move on. And we don't judge, So if we develop this, I think if we approach life with a little bit of kindness and with a little bit of understanding, then instead of getting upset with people that apply that can't speak English, we understand their predicament. There are some TCNs that for them, this is their way out. Yeah, so this is crucial for them to leave. They don't know English. They're going to try and risk it. And that's fine. With TCNs, however, my view is also that there are cultures and cultures that fit in a company and cultures that don't. So, for example, one of the biggest challenges we're finding, and this is why Insights is, especially for people who employ TCNs, is actually really, really interesting, is because you can understand the percentage of diversity in your teams. There was a time when foreigners used to come to Malta and complain that our teams only spoke Maltese, which I guess is justified because we're living in Malta and that's okay. You would never go to France and they would never talk to you in English in France, for example. But now we are seeing a different phenomenon. So you have groups, ethnic groups from third countries, that speak a completely different language, and it's extremely difficult to manage. So you need also to be very clever in your recruitment. If you have teams, try and make them as diverse as possible, that they don't speak the same language, which is foreign to yours, because it's going to be very difficult to manage them. And then you will have ganging up, and then you will have the whispering campaigns, which we're used to in Maltese, but we're not used to in a different language. So, my late grandfather once told me when I wanted to go and work for an international organization, he said, Mikela, it's exactly the same as the Maltese organization. The only difference is when they swear at you, they will swear at you in a language you don't understand. That's pretty much it, right? So why make your life very, very difficult in the long run? You'll be satisfying a need, but if you do it critically and looking at your insights and using that data, you say, Mela, I'm going to have a threshold of maximum 2 people from the same country in the same team. because it's going to be very difficult. There are some teams that are quite desperate, you know. The manager is Maltese, the rest of the staff come from one country, they speak a language alien, they have no clue. Very difficult.
I think that wraps up all of the questions that we have today. Thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate your time. We hope that you have some good takeaways from this webinar. Touching upon a bit more what Mikela mentioned earlier, we are working on the Shireburn Academy, which will include training. At the moment, we offer training on our products. This is going to go above and beyond that and be more training for HR and even hiring managers. If you voted in the poll, we will be getting back to you shortly from the sales team with more information and to see if you would like to set a demo of the products as well. We can also share some links. We've had some campaigns, for example, Indigo Benchmarks with a video recording of the product as well. So we can send that over as well. Thank you again for your time. We'll be holding more and more webinars in the upcoming future. So keep an eye on your inbox for the ones coming up. And I'm just seeing in the chat, okay, thank you. They're just thank yous. I thought that more questions are coming.
Thank you. So thank you. I get you. HR is a very challenging job. You need something strong in the morning. By lunchtime, you need something even more strong. It's extremely difficult. We're here to help. We're here to make life a little bit easier. But at least mostly, we're here to understand. We're here to understand the challenges that you face and build software that actually makes your life a little bit easier. So do we get it right all the time? No, trust me. But we try. We try, and the more feedback we get from you, the better it is. And it's just a very, very big pleasure to share our experience and our journey with our clients to help you improve and build happier workplaces. So thank you very, very, very much, and have a super day.